Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching Tomorrow's America. My name is William Donahue. I am your host today. I want to thank everyone for watching. And today's episode is called Iran is a Cover Up. And it's not in a cover up in the sense that, we're strategic allies with Israel in the Middle East and, they have problems and all that. All that's real, all that's true. What our involvement, how necessary our involvement is what's up for debate. But Iran is a cover up in the sense that this is a quote from Gerald Celente: when all else fails, they take you to war. Okay, so they are taking us to war. There's so much going on in the United States within our own borders and our own capital city. There's so much going on that the need for us to be over there is not in anyone's interest. I think we all agree. And I think if you've been watching this show long enough, it pretty much vets people that you would agree with that statement. A lot of people, it was called Operation Epic Fury. A lot of people are calling it Operation APAC Fury because of Israel's involvement with the US government, Trump being tied at the hip with Israel. The whole thing is for Israel, and it's obvious, and they've said it's for Israel, and then they've backwalked that, time and time again. Trump wanted to, Marco Rubio said, oh yeah, we did this for Israel to help them, with defending them when they attacked. And Trump had to come out the next day and say, no, if anything, I forced Israel's hand. I'm the one who made them do it. And this whole thing, like I've talked about for the past few episodes, ever since Trump had those behind closed doors meetings with Netanyahu, it seemed like it was imminent that we were going to strike Iran, which is a huge problem because for anyone who lived through the Iraq war and saw what happened to those veterans that came home and saw how it was a never-ending war and saw how, now the Middle East has unfolded. We didn't do anything over there. All the terrorist groups, if not, there's more terrorist groups now than there was before. So that's a huge problem. The whole thing. So what's going on in the United States? Why am I saying this is a cover up? We got the Epstein files coming out. We got 0 deep state arrests. Nobody from the Biden administration, nobody from January 6th, 0 deep state arrests. Trump is in total retreat in Minnesota. It looks like we lost to the Antifa pro-immigrant rioters. It looks like Trump backed down from them. The whole Republican Party is split due to Trump's lies on the campaign trail, lack of deportations. Trump is instituting digital surveillance all over the place, and much more. But those are just some examples of what's going on in the home front that you'd think we'd be more concerned about than going and bombing Iran, who didn't do anything to provoke it. If anything, they were negotiating. We bombed all the negotiators. Every time Iran came to negotiate, Israel bombed all their negotiators. They were negotiating weeks ago. They were negotiating 9 months ago, and in the middle of the negotiations, we bombed Fordo. Then they were negotiating weeks ago, and in the middle of the negotiations, after a mediator set up another negotiation somewhere else, and everyone said, okay, and they said, we made a lot of progress today in these talks. Boom, Israel strikes Iran. We bomb all over the place. Now we have a full-blown, full-fledged war. We haven't declared war, so legally it's not a war. They can deny it all they want, but they've all called it a war, so it's a war. I mean, if you live with a girl, sleep with her, go on dates, go out to the movies, bring her to grandma's house for Christmas, and you say, "Oh no, she's not my girlfriend." It's like, okay, well, what do you call it then? It is what it is. This is a war. You are a couple, whether you put a label on it or not. You guys are dating. Whether you put a label on it or not, we are at war with Iran, and there's no end in sight as far as I could tell, unless some serious concessions are made with their new leadership. So, today we're talking about Iran being a cover up. So, I'm going to start off with what's going on in the country because these are things that I don't think they want you to talk about. I think they want you to talk about Iran and have the news focused on that and change the news cycle so that these other things are swept under the rug. So let's see what's being swept under the rug. This is probably the most important thing that is going on because this is the fight. Okay, I'm going to take this down for a second. This is the fight. The fight is for the truth. The fight is against the globalists. The fight is not tribal things like race, like all the little groups they break you down into. You have to call me they them. Well, you can't have an abortion. Well, you have to allow illegal immigrants in the country. No, we don't. We're going to kick them all out and kick out the Democrats. This tribalism, this back and forth. That's not what this is about. What this is about global elites, bankers, oligarchs, running the world and pulling the puppet strings and playing us like a game of chess. But instead of it being me against you, fair versus fair, which is true capitalism, they move this piece and then they look at it from this angle and they say, well, if I did my next move, then the other team wouldn't be able to get their piece across to kill mine. So they're playing both sides and they're strategizing for each other. So we're talking about globalism. We're talking about AI. We're talking about mass surveillance. We're talking about martial law. We're talking about anything that impedes my freedom as an American citizen and that extends worldwide. Anything that impedes just from a human level. That's what we're talking about. So these are our overlords, right? Everyone's heard of the Rothschilds. They say it's a big conspiracy theory. They say, oh, they don't own all the banks and all this stuff. Well, none of that's true, okay? That's all distancing themselves. That's all denial. That's all trying to make you feel crazy. Why would Bill Clinton hang out with Ghislaine Maxwell to get access to the Rothschilds if there was no benefit from this connection? So I'm going to play this clip.
She stated that President Clinton was her friend, not Epstein's friend. Is that accurate?
I'd say that it was accurate to say that I felt closer to her than to him.
And for the record, why was that?
Because I had seen her more and because she was very good friends with Evelyn Rothschild and his wife, Lynn, whom I knew.
Okay, so he hung out with Ghislaine Maxwell because she had access to a couple Rothschilds and, the whole thing. So why do I say that this is the biggest news going on right now? Because while we're bombing Iran, they are actively covering up. Pam Bondi is actively covering up like she always has. She was involved in the Epstein case in 2009. She worked in Palm Beach, Florida, in the court system that helped him to get off with a light sentence where he had to show up to jail for the weekends, and he was allowed to be free and go to work all week as long as he showed back up or whatever. He had a cushy sentence for doing things sexually with minors. Okay, huge problem. Huge problem that she was involved in that, and now she's involved in this, and we're not seeing any repercussions for any of the people who were involved. So, massive big deal. That's why it's the number one thing on my list today, because Bill Clinton was the president of the United States. The Rothschilds are super wealthy bankers. Epstein's a satanic global elite pedophile running around the country with connections to all the most powerful people in the world. Of course, that would be the number one thing to be talking about. My number one concern. What a bunch of Iranian people do 8,000 miles or however far away Iran is from me right now means literally nothing to me. Because, I mean, unless they literally were about to launch a bunch of nukes at the United States, I wouldn't care at all what they were doing, what they were thinking, how they, practice their religion or what they do over there. To a certain extent, I guess, if they had slavery or things that, like I said, for humanity purposes, if they had a dictator and slavery and all these things, I could see stepping in. But that's not what's happening. It's not a human rights excuse that they're giving us for this. So what else is happening? Well, right now, today, and I would imagine, I think it was today. It was either today or yesterday. Tim Walz got questioned about his foreknowledge of the fraud that was taking place in Minnesota. So, Tim Walz, I got one clip here and then an article afterward where I'm going to show. This clip shows just the blatant hypocrisy and the cover up of Tim Walz and how he tried to divert attention away from the fraud scandal. And then I'll show you what the House's conclusion was.
Yep. And would you agree that as governor, ultimately you're responsible if tax dollars are defrauded?
Yes, I would agree.
Yep. Would you also agree that calling somebody racist is a serious accusation?
If they are racist, I think it's
I'm
probably
asking
accurate.
you, is that a serious accusation to make about somebody?
I think it's just an observation of reality.
All right, well, let's go there. Is it racist for a government official to identify fraud?
So he's saying, is it racist for a government official to point out fraud? These are things that Tim Walz was saying about people trying to uncover this fraud that was going on, that he was helping, that he had knowledge of and covered up and did nothing about. He was saying that people that pointed that out were racist. So here he is having to testify whether or not that is true. Is it racist for somebody to point out that somebody's stealing money from the government?
No.
No. Is it Islamophobic
To identify fraud?
to identify fraud?
No, I don't believe it would be.
How come multiple whistleblowers have said that your administration told them not to say anything about widespread fraud across multiple agencies because doing so would be considered racist or Islamophobic?
I can't speak to it because it's not anything I would say.
Well, that's what your administration has said and has told whistleblowers. And as you just testified, the buck stops with you. It's what you stated in your statement whenever you announced you weren't running again.
So there's Tim Walz playing stupid like he doesn't know what he's talking about. But they literally probably have meetings where they decide what phrase they're going to say. Like, JD Vance is weird. For 2 weeks, for months, JD Vance was weird. Everyone had to come out and say the corporate line that JD Vance is weird. And he is a little weird. But you know what? I'm pointing out that it was a strategy. So that was Tim Walz involved in the fraud and or denying, you know, his part in the fraud and playing dumb that he didn't know that you know he was calling people racist for pointing out fraud, even though he was calling people racist, saying, oh well, if you point this out, then you're anti-Somali. Okay, well, I guess I'm anti-Somali because there's fraud and I don't like it. So this is from the end of the hearing here. They wrapped it up and they say Minnesota Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison lied about knowledge of fraud and silenced whistleblowers. Today, the House Committee on Oversight of Government Reform held a hearing titled Oversight of Fraud and Misuse of Federal Funds in Minnesota, Part 2. The committee is continuing to investigate how criminals in Minnesota have ripped off an estimated $9 billion in taxpayer funds meant to feed children. During today's hearing, lawmakers emphasized that whistleblower testimony and information gathered by the committee now shows that Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Ellison were aware of widespread fraud in Minnesota's social service programs, lied about their knowledge of the fraud, and retaliated against state employees who bravely raised concerns. So why is he still in office? Why is he not in handcuffs? Why are we bombing Iran when he is walking around on the streets of America after taking my hard-earned tax money, Minnesota people's hard-earned tax money? It's my money because I paid into the federal government that paid the grants for Minnesota to give it to these fraudsters for Tim Walz to cover it up. So why is he walking around in America not in handcuffs, yet we're sending planes across the planet to bomb in the Middle East on behalf of Israel, because Israel says, oh, well, this is a religious dictatorship and they have a religious thing that says that they need to kill all of us. Meanwhile, they're invoking Amalek and saying that every man, woman, child, and animal in the field needs to be killed because God said so. Israel is literally an ethno state, and yet they're criticizing Iran for being an ethno state. I don't see the point of why we're bombing over there, and Tim Walz is still the governor of Minnesota. So that is just irritating. And then I'm going to play a clip now this is just an article showing that one of the Somalis that he would say if you said that this guy did what he actually came out, it actually came out that he actually did the thing. But back then, when you would have pointed it out, you were a racist and an Islamophobe and anti-Somali if you said that this was true, even though it was. That's how they cover things up. They try and guilt you by making you feel like you're a racist or you're this or you're that if you point something out. So let me add this to the screen. So what was happening was there was federal grants to feed children during COVID that Minnesota was getting and giving to people during the pandemic and you know the time after when everything was going on, and the Somali community was fraudulently taking the money and not giving it to any kids. So Minneapolis man who tried to bribe juror in $250 million welfare fraud scandal learns his fate. Minneapolis man will spend nearly 5 years behind bars for attempting to bribe a juror during a federal trial related to Minnesota's infamous $250 million welfare fraud scandal. Tim Walz was covering this up. Now the guy's getting 5 years. But when it happened, if you said that that was because, the Somalis were defrauding the system and all this stuff, that was a while ago. They would say that you were racist. Now we've had Nick Shirley come out with massive fraud scandals. They found whatever it was, 9 billion or 18 billion or whatever, which isn't even the real number. The Somalis were caught taking welfare, but then they need government assistance from us. But then this isn't even part of the fraud. Then they have an abundance of money that they can send back to Somalia to give to their family, but they need welfare from us while they're here. All this is on Tim Walz's watch. He's the governor. He's the one in charge. Like he said, the buck stops with him, is what he said. Well, the buck stopped with him, and he let it keep going and defrauded the American people. He should be in jail. This is another thing that we've seen nothing on the COVID pandemic. No accountability for anyone involved in the COVID pandemic. And now the CDC came out with a paper about the COVID vaccines. So they came out with a paper about the COVID vaccines, and I'm going to play this clip for you. The paper was completely blank. The paper was completely blank. The whole thing was redacted.
For the vaccine. Paper's there, and there's nothing printed on it. I find that very interesting, disheartening, disgusting, and lots of other words. But then it gets better. It just keeps, wait, there's more. It just keeps happening. The CDC redacts every single word of a 148-page study on a myocarditis after COVID vaccination. So I asked research to print the study for me. 148 pages. The entire thing is redacted. What good does a study do if there's nothing there? Then I want to know, wait, what might have been there that they needed to redact it? That's even scarier.
We're witnessing. So the COVID pandemic, no accountability. So they told you Somali fraud wasn't happening. They told you there was nothing wrong with the COVID vaccines. What else did they tell you? They told you they didn't even look into the Epstein files for years and years and years. And then Trump gets in office, and they go after it full speed, and then it's about to come out, and then they try and open up court cases to block it, So to them, the Epstein files was always a game that they could play, a little political capital that they could dangle over someone's head. Well, this just came out, and this is ironic because all of the people who recently were calling for the Epstein files, not the people like me who have been calling for it since 2019, and not the people like Alex Jones who've been calling for it since the early 2000s, but the people who started calling for it after Trump got elected when it seemed politically convenient, all of those people are on this list of government officials who don't want disclosure about sexual misconduct. What do they call it? Settlements. So the Congress people literally used taxpayer money to settle on sexual misconduct cases that they were accused of. And look at all these people on this list are all people who voted against disclosing the names of people who had those settlements, who used taxpayer money to settle on cases for sexual misconduct. These are your government officials that you elected and put in office to represent you that are using your money to cover up their perversion and their depraved nature, I guess. I don't know how to phrase it, but you get what I'm saying, because we understand these things. These people are supposed to be responsible. When you send your kid to school, you expect a teacher to watch them and be responsible for them until they get off the bus and go home. You know what I mean? You want your kid back in the same shape you gave them to them. These people have a responsibility. Well, these government officials have a responsibility to manage our money and to be good stewards of it, and to be good people and examples for people that you're supposed to be a role model. We're supposed to look up to you and say, well, you know, this is our champion. We're sending out our champion from New York State to represent us as people for what we believe in. We want freedom. We want equal rights. We want prosperity. We want jobs, good paying jobs. We want good health. And instead, these people go and get tied up in a case of God knows what, and we won't find out because they just voted against releasing it. But they get caught up in a case of something having to do with probably sexual harassment or whatever else. And then they say, oh, well, I guess, whoops, I messed up this time. Let me reach into the piggy bank and steal a couple, probably thousands and thousands of dollars. Let me steal $30,000 and settle on this case with this girl so that the American people don't know. Oh, now it came up in Congress that they want to release the list and my name's on there. I'm not voting for that. It's sickening. It's disgusting. This just happened. This is a big deal. Kristi Noem and Tom Homan were two of the best parts of the Trump administration. They didn't get Matt Gaetz. They didn't get many of their appointments, but they got Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, and they were going after the illegal immigrants, which was one of the main things that drove the election, that drove us to vote for Trump. And now Tom Homan backed off from Minnesota, let Antifa and the crazed lunatic immigrant mob win. They backed off, and now Trump is firing Kristi Noem because she made, and I get it. I mean, you want to be anti-corruption, then be anti-corruption all the way across the board. But I don't see how this is corruption. She used taxpayer money, DHS money, to fund commercials that were for the Department of Homeland Security, saying, if you're in this country illegally, please self-deport. So she was making an ad to try and encourage people to self-deport. And, you know, I don't know if she didn't get, she says that she got approval from Trump. He says that she didn't. And yeah, so she's fired. She was one of the better people that we had in the administration, and she's gone. So, and you know what? Just going back to that sexual misconduct thing, if they're willing to cover up low-level senators who, you know, might have sent a flirtatious text and ended up with a lawsuit, and, you know, they're willing to cover up that, then what are they covering up with the Jeffrey Epstein thing? What are they covering up with the COVID vaccine? What are they covering up with the Somali fraud? And it's just a trend. It's just a never-ending trend. And that's what I'm trying to put across to you guys. This is my opinion. This is my belief. This is how I look at things, that there is an obvious trend. And that's what I'm trying to encourage, is critical thought. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to believe everything I say or whatever, but at least think critically. There's a lot of people out there who go on Twitter and they see that Cat Turd or Gunther Eagleman or any of these people posted something, and these people are nobody. Look at this. See right here? William Donahue. I stand by what I'm saying. I literally believe this stuff. And I'm wrong about certain things, or I misstate certain things. I'm going off of memory and articles and general knowledge. I work 40 hours a week. I can't possibly, you know, uh, be like an encyclopedia all the time, but I have at least something that I stand for. You either stand for something or you'll fall for anything. That is a huge, huge part of what drives me to look into this stuff. And so anyway, my point is that there's a trend of this stuff that just continues to happen, and yet nobody's held accountable. And yet we're bombing in the Middle East for God knows what reason. How about this? This is another thing that we won't get any accountability on. This is the Joe Biden auto pen scandal. Remember that? They were literally White House staffers, anybody was just walking in and getting access to just go into the auto pen, say, hey, I want to release this criminal, this CCP Chinese immigrant who had tons of child material on his device. I'm like I said, I might be misquoting this. I'm going off memory, but literally look it up. They released this guy. He went back to China, and it was on the Biden. It was an auto pen. They literally auto pen without Biden's approval, no paper trail, no chain of custody or whatever. He wasn't there that day. It's all proven that somebody else used the authority of being the United States president to just release this guy out into the world. And now Trump goes after, just like Fani Willis, just like James Comey, just like Letitia James, just like all of them. Now here we go. It's behind a paywall. The article is that Trump, his Justice Department tried to go after them for the auto pen case, and the lawsuit failed. And now they're saying that, oh, well, there's nothing we could do about the auto pen thing. It's just water under the bridge. But that was bad. But we can't do anything. So sorry, we lost the case. Okay, well, that's 0 to like a million. We just literally got scored on. It'd be like a football game where they just keep doing onside kicks the whole game and score touchdowns every time on the kickoff. They literally onside kick it, grab the ball, and score a touchdown every play of the entire game. We're losing really, really bad. And we already took a big hit during Biden. Then we expected Trump to bring it back a little. He's not moving the ball at all. So that is, and I'm sure there's more, but that is the real news of what's going on in the United States. Then we got Iran, and Iran is another huge thing. So we're talking about what we said in the beginning, the Rothschilds, everything that's going on with the globalists and the elites and all that stuff. That's a big deal. And we said that Iran was a cover-up, but Iran is a whole nother thing because there's alliances tied to Iran. There's massive potential kinetic energy built up with this conflict between Russia, China, Venezuela, where we got Maduro from. All these countries are tied in together, Cuba. So this is potentially a huge deal, but I'm just saying that everything that we talked about prior to this is the real news of what matters to the American people now on a global scale for Iran. So once all those other things are resolved, then I want to talk about Iran. Okay, so this one might be behind a paywall too, But the headline here is Trump follows his gut. His national security advisors try to keep up. Decisions come fast, even if contradictions and inconsistencies abound. Okay, we're behind a paywall, but it's a New York Times article. I'll just put it up. It's a New York Times article, and that's what they're saying. Trump follows his gut. He's got all these people that he just does things on a whim. He decides tariffs. He makes all these changes all the time, constantly. And we're not seeing any action anywhere, any wins, any strategy, any pulse, any connection to the American people, any awareness of what's going on. We're not seeing any of it. So we could tell that he's just going by his gut. And realistically, with this whole thing, so the Senate, he didn't have the power to do this. Okay, you don't have the power to unilaterally decide that the whole country's going to war. Okay, it's ridiculous that they're even doing that. And now the Senate is blocking the vote on whether Trump constitutionally did have the power. They were going to take it into the Senate, vote on whether he had the power to do this, and instead they blocked it. So it says the Senate on Wednesday rejected an effort to advance legislation that would restrain President Trump's using further military action in Iran, despite overwhelming support from Democrats. Okay, so why can't we ever get anything done for the American people? But something like this war that's so unpopular, that gets done, no problem. Just like that. Because what we saw, so we said, Operation APAC Fury, all these people are paid by special interest groups, NGOs, PACs, and they get money, and you could tell that they operate based on this money because they make decisions that they're the representative, but they don't do what the voters voted them in to do. So that right there tells you that there's some other reason. Because if your reason was just to get popularity and become an electable candidate, they wouldn't do any of the things that they do. Your objective is to get PAC money so that you can run a $5 million or a $100 million campaign and live in the lap of luxury and have all these benefits and all this stuff. Again, to quote Gerald Celente, and not a quote, but to say what he says, campaign contributions are nothing but bribes with a fancy name. Okay, it's something like that, he says, but that is honestly what the truth is. And if you guys don't know who Gerald Celente is, he runs the Trends Journal, and it's an awesome magazine. He's an awesome guy. He does great interviews and stuff like that. But I quoted him twice today, and he's right. He's right. And there's another thing it says that he says. I'm going to butcher it again, but when there's problems, bombs away over Baghdad, Baghdad, basically saying that they'll just take us to war in the Middle East if we have any domestic issues that they can't solve without, people noticing who's responsible or whatever. So the Senate blocked a vote that would restrict Trump's war powers. And that's because, and I was going to say this, at the State of the Union, literally the only thing that everybody stood up for in the room was talking about potentially striking Iran. So they're obviously all, on board with that. And that's why they'll vote against. The Constitution says that the president doesn't have the power to unilaterally excuse me, to unilaterally just decide that he wants to go to war. But the Senate, because they want to avoid this little inconvenient clause in the Constitution, they'll just block the vote on whether we get to decide if it's constitutional or not. So John Thune is spineless. I think honestly, Trump, I said it before the election, he has so much baggage that it's almost like a real shame that he's in charge of this movement, that he hijacked this movement that rode in on the backs of great people like Ron Paul, like all these freedom fighters for years and years and years, G. Edward Griffin, Ted Gunderson, like great old, and then you got to throw Alex Jones in there, and you got to throw other people, but they created a movement that Trump hopped on its back and rode into being the president, and then he got off the horse and said, "Hey, Ben Shapiro, come here. What should I do?" Or he just got off the horse and went this other direction, split off from us, and then he said, "Oh my God, you guys didn't follow me from what you believe into this new thing? Well, you guys aren't MAGA." No, Trump, you aren't MAGA. You're the one who's not MAGA. We were MAGA before you ever were on the scene. We wanted to make America great by pointing out fraud, by telling the truth about things like 9/11 and all these classified things that people have been questioning. It's our paperwork. You're the government. We, the people, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States. I read the preamble last week or whatever. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. We want freedom not only for us, but for our posterity, for our children down the line. Ronald Reagan said that freedom is always one generation away from extinction. We made the movement, not you, Trump. And now you got us in a forever war over in Iran when we wouldn't have voted for you if you said that during the campaign. You literally said, "I'm the peace president. No new wars. I'm Mr. No New Wars. And if you go with her, she's going to take you to war." And Kamala Harris wouldn't have been any better. So we had no choice. That's like having to pick between eating dog poop. You could either eat dog poop or vomit. Which one do you want? I pick neither. And that, I don't know. I pick neither. I mean, is that a thing? I pick neither. I want something else. I want something. I want a hamburger. I want steak, fries. I want like a huge meal fit for a king. I don't want to eat either dog poop or vomit. Is that okay? So, now, oh yeah, okay. So, I don't think I mentioned it last time, but we, either us or Israel bombed a nuclear reactor in Iran. That's a major, huge pollution for the planet. No environmentalists talking about that. The U.S. Senate rejected the War Powers Resolution. Iran says it hit U.S. warship with missiles 600 kilometers away in the North Indian Ocean, which we'll get back to the Indian Ocean. The Marsh McLennan Unit Marsh Risk met with Trump administration to discuss the creating of government-backed insurance mechanism to help ships resume transit through the Strait of Hormuz. Houthis in Yemen are planning attacks on vital targets in Saudi Arabia. Kurdish forces in Iraq have launched a ground military offensive into Iran against the Iranian government, unconfirmed, and the Kurds deny the reports. But Netanyahu asked the White House if the Trump administration was secretly talking with Iran about a ceasefire. That was another rumor that we wanted a ceasefire because Trump realized how big of a mistake this was. And we saw him yelling at Pete Hegseth in the White House. There's a picture of him, and Trump's like, yelling at Hegseth. And someone caught a picture of it through the window. And then, we want to have a ceasefire with Iran after we're the ones who started it. Iran will target Israeli embassies. Iranian intelligence sends word to U.S. on potential talks to end war, but U.S. officials say no active negotiations. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, I don't know, says he has no choice but to fight. Iran begins shift towards governing for a prolonged war. Turkey says a ballistic missile fired Iran was destroyed by NATO systems in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. Allegations that the ballistic missile was launched at Incirlik Air Base, which hosts NATO nukes. U.S. Secretary of State Rubio says, well on their way to achieving Iran mission objectives. Did the U.S. just blink here? Putin notes that oil and gas prices are rising. Airline troubles in the region. Hegseth floats new timeline up to 8 weeks that we might be at war with Iran. If the U.S. and Israel pursue regime change scenario in practice, final effective missiles will target Dimona nuclear reactor. Senior Iranian cleric Javadi Amoli, shedding the blood of Israelis and Trump is what is required of devout Shiite Muslims. From the state media of Iran, Western officials claim Iran could be days from exhausting ballistic missile supply, but the Pentagon is also concerned about their own stockpiles. Israel and Hezbollah are now in a ground war in South Lebanon. And that's just some of what's going on. I'm just sorry to fire through all them headlines. It's kind of dry and boring. But, more information is better. So, since Iran has been decapitated, meaning that their head of state was assassinated, since then they've been trying to choose a new supreme leader. And just the other day, Israel bombed the council that was trying to figure out who their new leader was. So that's we want regime change. We want this Iranian people to pick their own government. We're not involved unless it's the wrong guy. Then Israel will bomb the council that's trying to pick the person. So that happened, and the article says the Israeli Air Force on Tuesday struck the building housing Iran's Council of Experts in the holy city of Qom in an attempt to disrupt the process of appointing a new supreme leader, an Israeli defense official said. So, perfect. Let's just bomb their new leader, who is, this is the next article here. They are trying to pick somebody, and it seems like the person that they came up with. Oh, what we got here. Seems like the person that they came up with is the Ayatollah's son. I didn't realize this was a
Among
video, but
candidates for
we could just go to it.
Iran's next supreme leader is one who really stands out, and that's Mojtaba Khamenei. He is one of the sons of the slain father and his wife killed in the initial Israeli airstrike on Saturday that sparked this region-wide war that we're seeing now involving Iran, Israel, the Americans, and the wider Gulf Arab countries. Now, Mojtaba Khamenei is sort of a secretive character. He's not really well known. There are a few photographs and videos of him, but he's believed to be very close to Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, and he was viewed as a gatekeeper, someone who was in charge of his father's office when he ruled as supreme leader. Now, there's some concern because analysts believe that Mojtaba Khamenei is actually much more hardline than his father, and he would take over Iran as it faces this war and as it has a stock.
So, yeah, he's more hardline than his father. He was raised under his father and probably groomed into this role. Now his father was killed, and the Khomeinis are literally direct descendants of Muhammad. So that'd be like the Pope being a direct descendant of Jesus and somebody killing them. They look at it religiously as like one of their prophets, one of their people, one of their deities on earth died because of the US and because of Israel. And now the son is going to potentially step up to be the leader, which probably isn't what the US or Israel would want. It's probably not in our interest. We probably should have negotiated with Ayatollah Khomeini and just I mean they weren't striking us, so why did we strike them? So I'm going to add this article. This is putting pressure on India. This is putting pressure on the UK. This is putting pressure on people countries all over the world. Here we go. There we go. I don't pay for access to any of these things, so of course I'm getting behind a paywall again. U.S. sinking of Iranian warship piles pressure on India's Modi. And the article goes on to talk about how India feels pressure from this whole situation, and I think it was Pakistan that they attacked a U.S. embassy. And you got the BRICS currencies. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, Saudi Arabia, and South Africa. Iran. There's a whole problem over there. And Indonesia is getting involved in this conflict. The Middle East is getting involved in this conflict. The US, India is feeling the pressure. And then this is the UK. Like I mentioned, the UK's facing backlash from this. This is the UK. Okay, this article's interesting. Ignore that it comes from Stu Peters, because I don't know if anyone's seen my Jonathan Greenblatt song, or no, my Common Sense song. I said that rational people would ignore ignorance, that like an ignorant person is not credible. Okay, so ignore that it's from Stu Peters, and ignore his little caption about this. Israel tried to wipe out British base in Cyprus and blame it on Iran. UK says drone targeting British base in Cyprus did not originate from Iran. So this is probably an assumption from Stu Peters, and that's why I say to ignore it. But at the same time, you can't ignore it because Israel's been known to carry out false flags. But right here, at midnight on 2nd of March, was not launched from Iran. So maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, but credibility wise, I don't like Stu Peters. So, we'll just say that we'll see what unfolds. I'm keeping an open mind. I think it's highly possible, but we'll see. So, the UK obviously has had one of their bases struck, whether it was Israel or Iran or whatever. That gives now the potential for them to get drug into the war. And then last but not least, this article here, I hope to God is true. I hope that this person's prediction turns out to be accurate, because this has the potential to be the biggest deal out of all of it. Is that if China was to get involved? Oh God, here we go. Oh, no thanks. Okay, why China won't help Iran. So if China was to get involved, that would be a huge problem. And I'm hoping to God that they don't get involved. China is watching carefully as the United States and Israel bombard Iran. Beijing is, after all, Tehran's most important partner. The two countries grew close over shared history and goals. Both trace their roots to leading ancient non-Western civilizations, and both oppose a Western-dominated global order today. China's most energy security is also connected to its relationship with Iran. More than 55% of China's total oil imports in 2025 came from the Middle East, approximately 13% from Iran itself, most of which must pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which is closed at the moment, the narrow waterway bordered by Iran. Because the recent bombing campaign will disrupt Iran's oil supply and could undermine production across the Gulf states, and because it potentially jeopardizes Beijing's ability to ship oil from the region, some analysts have speculated that Beijing will come to Tehran's aid, either with direct military intervention or at least material support such as dual-use equipment and parts, similar to what China has provided to Russia in the Ukraine war. But although China is concerned, it is not likely to get involved. After Israel's 12-day war against Iran in June 2025, China offered only boilerplate diplomatic rhetoric in support of the Islamic Republic. Similarly, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs official press conference remarks this week, the harshest language that the ministry was willing to use was in condemnation of the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, rather than of the overall campaign against Iran. So hopefully, and based on China's posture, it seems like it's possible, but it's probably the biggest concern out of this whole conflict is that China getting involved, Russia getting involved, would be potentially our biggest nightmare, fully realized, by everyone in the world. So this is what Trump literally rolled the dice and gambled, and what, we could literally lose the House because of our leaders' degenerate gambling habit. That's what it seems like. It seems like his ego was pumped up when he captured Maduro, and then he just went on this rampage of thinking he's invincible or thinking he's, Teflon Don or whatever they call him. And yeah, so that's my take on what's going on with the whole world and everything that's happening. That's my take, is that Iran is an unnecessary thing that we're doing for Israel, and all the news outlets are covering it. Meanwhile, you don't see anything about any of these other things. My whole list at the beginning, the Epstein files, literally satanic pedophiles talking about, taking over companies and Bitcoin and deciding things for the whole world. Zero deep state arrests, zero arrests for any of the crimes that were committed under the Biden administration. Retreat from Minnesota, the splitting of the Republican Party, the lack of deportations, and Trump's partnership with Palantir and all these AI companies that are buddying up to him, all the tech bros buddying up to him to put us under complete digital surveillance where, they might in the future have pre-crime analysis where if they think that you might commit a crime or that you thought about committing a crime, they might just put you away for a day so that, you can rethink that thought and they can do whatever to you. So that's my view of what's going on. I hope that you guys enjoyed this analysis. I hope that you guys, pray for the world and pray for the country and show your support for the channel by liking and sharing this video. Right in the title, it says must share episode. This is a must share episode that people need to have an understanding of what's going on in the world. Something else that you need to have a full understanding of what's going on in the world is to understand that Jesus is the King of Kings. So all these kings only have an appointment because God allows them to have power over the earth. But Jesus has the ultimate power. Have faith. Have faith. Have the faith of Tommy Robinson. Have the faith of Tommy Robinson, who literally knew that if he posted a documentary that he made, he would go to jail. And he said, you know what? It's better that I release this documentary and just do some time in jail than it not get out and people and I have that mark on my soul that I hid something that would have helped people to realize what the truth is and take him as an example and look into Tommy Robinson. He's a great guy from the United Kingdom, and he's a powerful voice against a lot of what's going on with their immigration over there. So be Christ-like in your actions, like these people. There's no Pharisees and leprosy on this earth for people to go and attack. Those were the problems of the time back then. These are the problems of the times now. Be Christ-like, be a prayer warrior. Go and attack these powers and principalities that are trying to pervert and convert our minds to think that two men can have a baby, that 2 + 2 = 5, that all these things that pollution. They said 1970 there's going to be an ice age if we don't handle the climate problem. Then it's going to be 120 degrees out, Fahrenheit 451. It's going to be 400 degrees out if we don't handle the climate thing. There's a hole in the ozone layer. All the lunacy that we've been dealing with. Jesus said that my people perish for lack of knowledge. So you need to have the knowledge and the skills that when you get faced with a situation, you can stand in the gap for others and do what's right by people and character, have character. Character is not what you do when people are watching. Character is what you do when nobody's watching. Have character. Have a strong foundation of morals. These things are important. That's what this show is all about. And knowing that, what I just said about Jesus and Christianity and being a moral person, that is the foundation that you build everything else on. And then go out and learn about the world and all these other problems. And when someone comes up to you and says, you know, hey, we need you to write on this piece of paper, write down what race you are and what your sexual preference is, because if we get a certain ratio, the company will, get a better ESG score and all this stuff or whatever. Not realistically that they would bring that to you, because that's at the managerial level. The managers, fill out papers like this and send them off and help the company get grants or whatever they call it in your state. But in New York, they call it goals. There's goals. You have to have a certain amount of minorities working in the job, or else you can't bid it. Even if you offer a lower price, but you have all white people working for you, they'll literally say, well, you don't qualify to get this job. So, unless you hire a Native American trucking company to deliver all the products and it ends up being 6% of your workforce, you can't have this job. That's inequality. That's unfair. That is a racist policy. So the beginning of understanding is knowing that you know nothing. Okay? Have an open mind. Be ready to learn. Be like a sponge and absorb as much knowledge as you can, and then think about it critically and create your own show and create your own opinion, or leave a comment if you have a differing opinion, and I'll bring it up and I'll read it on the show, and we can use that to edify everybody. So with that, I thank you for watching. I appreciate everyone. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you.